And next up, I'm really excited to introduce Allison Murphy. The title of her project is Expecting, Exploring Fertility and Loss Through Fiber Art. So I think this is a really wonderful addition to the Maker Showcase that really shows how rehabilitative making can be. So I want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with us today.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Hi, I'm Allison Murphy. I'm here today to present my project, which was on here multiple times. This is a 6-piece series I made between 2022 and 2024 to process my life experiences in trying to conceive. 5 of the pieces are currently on view at Alienated Majesty Books until July 27th, so I only have this one here. Before I go any further, I want to mention some disclaimers. I'm going to be talking about fertility, miscarriage, medical procedures, birth, and parenting. If you're sensitive to any of these topics, I'm not offended. If you need to skip this talk or decide to leave, it gets too hard halfway through. And with that, oh yes, so this show is up at Alienated Majesty Books until next Saturday. It's up there on the bookshelf, all 5 pieces, in kind of like it kind of integrates well with the books, I think, honestly. All right, so the show. What are you waiting for today? This week, this year, is the outcome in your control? What if you kept doing that thing over and over again, expecting to be able to move on, only to suddenly be thrust back to the starting point? No, you won't know why, nor will you find out what to do differently next time. Have you fallen down rabbit holes and taken dubious advice? Spent time and money asking experts what's wrong with you? Did they have the answers? 1/3 of all patients experiencing infertility are considered subfertile or infertile with no explanation. In June, World Infertility Awareness Month, I displayed expecting as my way of fostering empathy for and solidarity with people trying to conceive around the world and in my community. I wish to bring awareness to our uncertain paths, waiting for appointments and results, enduring the cycle of hope and grief, the pain of having to continue on with life as usual, pricey and invasive procedures, and managing the swirling inner turmoil. My aim with these works is to translate my feelings and experiences into rough and raw compositions that shed light on the challenges of fertility and miscarriage. I wish for the viewer to examine the details and be curious about the composition, symbolism, and abstraction. Thank you for your attention and sensitivity today. So, who am I? Like I said, my name's Allison. I'm a user experience designer that lives in Pflugerville, Round Rock, kind of like right on the border there. I'm originally from Long Island, New York, and I've lived in Austin for almost 6 years. I graduated with a BFA from State University of New York at Purchase College. There I am as a little baby. In freshman year, I fell in love with the physicality of printmaking, and just being able to use my whole body in like the process of making art was so different from high school, where I was just like painting or drawing. And then years later, I discovered my affinity for the traditionally dainty arts of cross-stitch embroidery and sewing, which took me back into this like hunched over position, trying to see the dots. I do have an example of a cross-stitch up here. I can pass it around but you have to be really careful that it doesn't fall out. So I don't know if you just want to like hold it like that. Yeah. Anyway, beginning in 2020, I found a way to combine these two, like physicality and getting big, and just the nice rote, repetitive nature of cross-stitch. I'm also an indoor rock climber, bag lady, 1-2 giant mug, gamer, and WWE fan, which I was lucky enough to get a picture of this next piece while I was working on it, watching someone get pinned to the mat. So the first one, Pomegranate, 2022. My pieces use cuts of fabric sewn together, kind of like a quilt, stretched over pegboard or foam core. I then make cuts into the quilt to stitch heavyweight yarn through the holes, just like cross stitch. And I can kind of show you the back of this piece if I didn't wedge it in too much. I think I did. Yeah, so the back of that, there's like holes there. but then that's foam core that I drilled holes in. I'm going to get more into the process later, but for now I want to go over the pieces and what they all look like. We've got pomegranate. The pomegranate is an old symbol of fertility. People used to embroider it on women's clothing to give them luck in conceiving. Here, the white pomegranate fades into the white background, expressing the feeling that our fertility was just hiding from us. We didn't know what was going on. We had no answers. It was like, where was it? Where's it going? kind of thing. I did pull out some tan or more like beige pieces just to kind of get that nice texture difference, and there's some lace in there as well, just for more depth. Right. Now, next one. That sinking feeling. This one represents my first pregnancy in 2022. I conceived after a really difficult hysterosalpingogram. You'll have to Google that. I don't want to describe it. And it seemed worth it to get this result. Like, we got a positive pregnancy test after that exam. But the giddiness in the ultrasound room around 8 weeks of gestation turned into a deep hollowness when we didn't see what we expected to see on the screen. Only a still dot in a cavern of black and silence. My pregnancy was a missed miscarriage. There were no signs whatsoever that it was a blighted ovum. It did not get past 4 weeks, basically. Still, to be sure, I had to wait 10 agonizing days. The staff thought maybe I had misreported my last period, and they were like, well, we just got to make sure. That sucked, though. At 10 weeks, we were back in the same dark ultrasound room, doing the same exact hollow image as if we had never left. And this piece used the same technique as the one before, where I kind of stitched pieces together and had to be more specific about where I put it to kind of get that sinking feeling going in the colors. Red. Red is my favorite color. I purposefully wore this to emphasize that. It usually is energetic and passionate, and it's, again, my favorite color to wear. It's also the color that every month signaled no pregnancy. A relief to some, a failure to me. And then later, after my missed miscarriage, when I was recovering from my dilation and curettage surgery, red meant seeing clumps of expelled tissue for days afterward, which is unfortunately a normal part of the devastating process of miscarriage. No matter the method and what it happens, I just had to choose this one. Again and again. In 2 years, we racked up a lot of bills and time spent in doctors' offices trying to find an answer. Every procedure we endured was experienced twice, once in the office and once in the itemized bill asking for payment. After my surgery, the medical bills kept coming. As soon as I thought I had moved on from the confusing loss, a new piece of mail would reopen the wound. I got really lucky to find this really cool fabric that was like kind of itemized pattern of, find some kind of itemized financial thing. I couldn't tell, maybe like a general store type stuff, but it just really felt, it screamed medical bill and just, like admin. Stylistically, this piece is my first departure from the rectangles. As you can see, I tried hexagons, that's right. This was I first experimented with curved pieces of fabric, and I wish I had pictures of how that failed. If we have any sewers in the room, curved fabric is really difficult, and I was trying to do it that big with an arc like that. That was just not going to work. And then I also tried to cut fabric with my Cricut before realizing I don't have the Cricut that cuts fabric. So I settled on the straight lines that I could cut by hand. What are the odds? 9 out of 10 couples get pregnant within 1 year of trying to conceive, and 1 in 5 known pregnancies end in miscarriage. What were the odds that we would be in the minority of these two statistics? The horizontal stripes of the quilted floral fabric represent pregnancies within a year, black representing the 1 out of 10 couples who need more time. let me see, where am I? Yes, the pomegranate blackwork pattern, which I had used in the white piece as well, fills the space, but only 1/5 of the pattern is missing to represent the 1 in 5 known pregnancies that end in miscarriage, which is before the 20-week mark. So I went back to strips on fabric on this one. This is not 2022, this is actually finished in 2024, so that slide is wrong. I felt like this was the best way to represent data, kind of like graphic, horizontal, but what you can't really see here is that each of these strips are made up of different shapes, so some of them are tan or parallelograms, some are triangles, and those, I did that on purpose so that to represent the uniqueness of each pregnancy, so even if it makes it past that 20-week mark, there's still so many things that can happen. But of course that wasn't the focus here, so I wanted to make it more subtle. And finally, which is the one I have displayed here, and obviously come look closer later if you want. Here we go. Early in 2022, the cycle before starting intrauterine insemination, IUI, which is the step before IVF, we finally got another positive test. As you would expect, I wouldn't let myself be excited. I was guarded and tense for weeks, and I insisted on the earliest possible ultrasound appointment, which was like 6 weeks, 3 days. When we saw the fetal cardiac activity on the ultrasound monitor, I broke down in joy and relief. I had hope. I allowed myself to see the possibilities ahead of us. I could finally dream of the stars and space themed nursery I had wanted to set up, and the future was bright. Okay, here we go. I didn't number these, so how did I get here? How did I decide maybe stitch on some pegboard and make a quilt and whatever? I actually saw something like this online where someone had painted cross stitch onto pegboard, and I'm like, oh my god, that would look so cool. And let me try to use real yarn. And then it also turns out other people have done it too, which is really awesome. The texture that you get with it is just so cool, and trying to represent something that's usually so small, like you saw in that piece, in big format, really just spoke to that inner printmaker in me, but not with printmaking, right? So at the same time of that, I was wondering what I could do with this stack of fabric that I had from my wedding planning. I loved the color scheme. I loved the feeling of these different fabrics. They were satin and tulle and all that. And I love reusing things. I love being what do I have and what can I make with it? And I didn't want to let these pieces go. I think I had originally sewn them into strips and thought I was going to just put it on a rod and then hang it. And I think I tried that. I mocked it up and I'm this looks weak. But what can I do? And then I stumbled upon that cross stitch thing, and it was boom. So I decoupaged these ones to a pegboard, found this nice white pattern that isn't too busy to kind of create the depth in there, and this method was born. This one still hangs above our bed, and kind of as our bed frame kind of thing. In general, cross-stitch fabric is measured in how many stitches per inch you can make. Typically, we use 14, 16, or 18 count, and that's just how many you can get in that much space. Pegboard is 1 count. You get 1 stitch per inch. So going back to that physicality of printmaking, I have to stand up and stitch a lot of these, especially since pegboard at that size is kind of heavy. So I would have to have it on a piece on my desk, get underneath it, and go like this, and tie the knot behind, which was really fun. Exhausting, but fun. I have an example of this one here too. This is a 2-inch. So that's a 2 count. That's two X's per inch. So beginning in 2022, I went all in. I went to Austin Creative Reuse. I bought a ton of yarn, ton of fabric. This isn't even half of my fabric. This is pretty much all of my yarn. I bought giant piece of pegboard from Lowe's, some frames, more yarn. I got really lucky and got this really giant piece of foam core for when I wanted to go really big and pegboard was too heavy. I actually ended up having to cut that in half, that pegboard, because it wouldn't fit in my car. And so my dreams of having a 5-foot piece were kind of dashed at that point. So what's next? And then I started experimenting. I was like, let's try other things. Like I saw people doing pictures with different colors, so let me put X's. Let me try embroidering, where that's like, those are just like French knots and single stitches. They're not like, it's not on a grid, right? I have this piece up here. I had gotten this fabric from Needleworks in Copperas Cove. She was like, oh my God, I have this like random canvas fabric. Do you want it? I'm like, absolutely. So I made 2 pieces with that. I kind of went back to putting fabric behind the cross stitch and made like this like kitschy lemon thing, but I wasn't happy with any of these experiments really. They didn't really speak to like what I wanted to do. So I went back to the drawing board and I was like, bought a bag of fabric that was all cut already into rectangles. And so I was like, oh, perfect, this is exactly like what I had done before. Let me just do it again and see how I can expand it. At the same time, well, maybe let me go back because that one was funny. Right, so I was just kind of plotting things out on my floor of like based on like colorful aesthetics. But then at the same time as I was doing this, I experienced my miscarriage, D&C, and the aftermath. And then I noticed this color palette fit into the visuals and the heartbreak I had been experiencing. So I rearranged the pieces to kind of fit better and got to work sewing and the process of processing my ordeal. Time?
You've got a couple minutes left.
Okay. So then, how is it? We already went through all the pieces. How do pieces get made? Cut the fabric or use it, as is, like with the rectangles. Lay it out over and over and over again, trying to find the right pieces. Make sure like there aren't 2 pieces next to each other like 3 times. Move the cat. Stitch it up. Move the cat again. Thomas loves getting onto that table. This one needed a lot of like rearranging. There was like actually a couple of other colors that just didn't make the cut. My most challenging piece to date, obviously, for hexagons, so difficult. How do you even do those corners? I just went right into it and did it. And then I top stitched the quilt of like written down fabric to the top because I didn't want to ruin the hexagon and like create a really neat like quilt shape. If you look at the quilts in there, you'll see in the other room that are hanging, you'll see like how neat those like edges can get. I just like didn't have the technical skill for that, so I settled for a top stitch. At the same time as that, if it's foam core, I'm drilling holes. I have a drill. I don't think I have a picture of the drill in here, but you know what a drill looks like. For the pomegranate one, I knew where I wanted it to go, so I only drilled the holes that I needed. I had used a piece of pegboard to like pre-draw out the pattern, so I knew which holes to drill. And I used those little brushes to just kind of keep it in place. Just whatever I can use works for me. For the big one, that's 1,296 holes that I drilled by hand. It's 3 3/4 inch thick foam core. So I wasn't sure if I could use like a laser cutter without it catching on fire. So I'm just like, let me just do it, right? And then, which you can see on the back here, if you guys want to come close up, I stretch it over the foam core or pegboard by like just stitching the side, just stitch by going back and forth, just to keep it taut, and then do it the same way vertically. And it kind of works out the wrinkles too, which is great. I'm not really great at getting wrinkles out of fabric yet. And on the black piece and the red piece, I also glued pieces of fabric on top of that to kind of break up the vertical stripes a little bit more. So you can see here on these black pieces were glued on top. I then use a really big like kids needle, which is actually used for knitting to like sew in ends, I think, and an X-Acto knife to make holes in the quilt, which is so heartbreaking. I was just like, oh, I don't want to ruin it. And there are some places on these pieces where I made a hole that shouldn't have been a hole, so I just kind of like try to push it back up and like hope no one sees it. Later on, I realized that an awl, AWL, makes a better hole. It pushes the fibers aside as opposed to like, I do for like holes like That one, where there's 6 threads going in, I do end up needing to cut, but you don't end up seeing those cuts. It's the holes that are only like 1 or 2 threads that you really end up seeing those vertical cuts, and it looks kind of messy. So this one's nice and clean because I used the awl for it. Didn't bring it with me, nor do I have a picture. I just figured everybody would know what that is. I finished the last piece this February with my little baby rolling around next to me after I came out of like the 4-month fog of new parenthood. It's wild. And yeah, so these are the 2 latest pieces in progress where you can kind of see the holes as I made them, and you know what it looks like as I just park the needle when I don't need it. And then so yeah, that's how Expecting was born. Not no pun intended. I didn't use a thesaurus. I was just like, born works. I was able to complete 4 of them before Riley was born, and then finish the largest one when I was, again, coming out of this like weird new parent fog. And this one is like a transition piece where I just had this really quick idea and I just couldn't stop thinking about it and had to make it. And what's next is I have 2 more pieces planned, of course. Like we all are makers, we always have pieces in progress. I want to play more with color, move away from the fertility stuff and like some more fun things. Maybe get more loose with it. I don't know how that works. And how do I balance everything? Life, work, and a baby? I don't know. If anyone has tips. We can have a Q&A the opposite way. Yeah, so if you still want to see the show, it's up at Alienated Majesty for 1 more week. I'm going next Saturday to pick it up. And that's it. That's 5 of the pieces in that. If anyone has any questions, how much time do we have left?
Yeah, I think, we'll take 1 or 2 questions now and then any others afterwards.
Yeah, and I know that this is a weird and sensitive subject, so if you don't want to scream them out loud, great. I'm here later.
What's your assistant's name? What's your roly-poly assistant's name?
Oh, my roly-poly assistant, her name is Riley. Yeah, that was when she was learning where her feet were.
Aww.
Yeah.
The work is really beautiful, and it reminds me of another textile artist who makes, or specifically she has a piece called Dilation and Curettage, which is about having received the bill for her dilation and curettage after, it was actually for her use after an abortion. It was for the sheet that we ditched by the guy left with his bill. And I was just thinking about wondering whether you have connected with other people making work in similar media about similar topics.
That's a great question. Yeah, thank you. I would love to know the name of that person. Oh, the question was, have I connected with anybody else who makes work in the same media or in the same topic of fertility? And the answer is no, I'm not great at that. And that's actually part of my I deleted that, my what's next, because I was kind of embarrassed to admit it, that like, I need to find more inspiration from artists around me. I recently discovered like this textile magazine that I want to subscribe to, and followed a few more people who do quilting like this on Instagram, and they're extremely inspiring, but they like make that their entire job, and like I don't know how I can do that right now with the baby, but yeah, I would love to know that artist's name.
Zoe Buckman.
Zoe Buckman, thank you, Zoe Buckman.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, and so, thank you everyone. Yeah, sorry, one more. I made an art account if you guys want to follow my very limited posts. I do not spam, but like, because I don't have a website, I just decided to use Instagram, so that's my Instagram name. Yeah.
Perfect. At Allison K Murphy.
At Allison K Murphy, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison. That was a
Wonderful
really wonderful
presentation.
presentation. And